Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thanks very much for joining us today for this webinar, one of the first we've done for quite a while here at Skills for English and PSI. Thanks very much for coming. My name's Tom. I lead on University Relationship Management for Skills for English at PSI. And today we're going to be talking a little bit more about test security, about trusting your English proficiency tests, about how operations work, and how PSI is very strong in this field, and how we're leading with respect to offering our services to other industries and other competitors in our own field. Without further ado, I'll introduce Charlie and Kevin. Well, I'll let them introduce themselves. Perhaps that's better. Charlie, how about you tell us who you are?
Yeah, thanks, Tom, and welcome to everyone joining the webinar. I'm Charlie Wall. I'm Senior Director of Client Success, and I manage the large number of UK clients, from government organisations like the Home Office through to awarding organisations. Security is at the heart of what I do. I've been in the assessment industry for over 25 years, and within that time I've worked with the UK Home Office, Department for Education, as well as numerous awarding organisations where security is key to our delivery. Really excited to be on this webinar today, and particularly talking of how we do it for Skills for English, because as part of my role, I'm the main point of contact with the Home Office for our Skills for English programme, which means I manage our test delivery from security, customer care, all the way through to test development. So looking forward to talking in more detail about how we utilise security in that programme, but also across PSI.
And Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. I'm Kevin Jolly. I'm PSI's Director of Security and Compliance. So my team and I focus on all things secure exam delivery, not only in support of the CEL program, but across all of PSI's clients globally. We focus on our test center processes, our quality assurance, and all the focus we give around secure test day delivery. Again, we focus and work collaboratively. You know, while I'm the focus of test security here at PSI, I think Charlie hit it on the head that we work very closely together. All of my partners here at PSI support me in security, and it's really part of our culture, and one that I'm very proud to be a part of.
Fantastic. Well, thanks very much for joining me, you both. And without further ado, I think we should get started with some of the themes that we want to discuss today. I think it makes most sense to start with what people will most associate in their minds with what it means for a test that's delivered in person to be secure, which is what it's actually like on test day. Should we start there?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when we talk about in test centers, what does security look like? It starts with, from me as a customer, from me as a test taker, what does my experience look like? I'm going to show up at a test center. What I'm going to describe to you today is not at all unique to the CEL program. What I'm going to describe today is what you would experience at PSI if you were taking a healthcare certification exam, an IT certification exam, or the Skills for English exam. It's the same experience. We believe in secure delivery across all of our clients, and it's our standard offering. So when I talk about that experience, that's it's universal to us here at PSI. And when I show up as a customer, as a test taker, it starts with, I'm greeted at the door. As much as we talk about security as part of the the experience, the customer service experience, we want to make sure we welcome and invite our test takers, and we want to make sure you have the right person for the right exam. It all starts with making sure, I'm Kevin Jolly. I'm here to take a particular exam. Let's make sure I'm on the test day roster. We are going to start by confirming that, and then before we get into the real check-in, before I'm going to look at your ID, before we're going to do these things, I'm going to ask you. You bring your personal belongings. You might have brought your wallet, cell phone, car keys, things like that. We need to secure our personal belongings. It's the first thing we do. We're going to lay out expectations. So I'm going to have you secure everything on your person, cell phones off, all personal belongings are going to be secured in a locker that is there on site. So the only thing you're going to have with you is yourself, your ID, and you're going to be prepared to go. So you're going to walk up to the desk, and you're going to say, all right, Kevin, I'm here to take the Skills for English exam. I, as a proctor, I'm going to review your ID. We're going to look at it. We're going to make sure you match you. One of the things we deal with around the world is potential fake IDs, things like that. So one of the things we focus on first and foremost is making sure it's a real test taker. We continually communicate with our sites when we do see concerns or trends around imposters or fake IDs. That's always a focus point for us. So I'm going to validate your ID. And then, all right, I've confirmed you are who you are. We're scheduled to take the right test. I've secured your belongings. Now we're going to prepare to go into the test room. But before we do that, I have to do a physical security check to make sure you're not bringing anything that you failed to disclose into the test room. So, I obviously have short hair, but if you have long hair, I'm going to make sure you don't have anything in your ears, no Bluetooth devices. I am going to always ask to see, I'm wearing long sleeves today. Can I see your wrists? You don't have anything writing. I have a smartwatch on. Let's make sure we take that off. Those are the things that a proctor is going to do that physical security check. I'm going to ask you to take your, show me the fronts of your pockets. I tell you, in security, it is something else that as much as we talk about the edge cases, we talk about all the complex ways people attempt to cheat. The number one way, historically, people bring things into the test room, it's in the front pocket of their pants. Like, that's why we focus on these key every time physical security checks. We make sure that you're not bringing things in. So it's ankles, it's wrists, it's pockets. It's a visual inspection. We're going to have people wearing religious head coverings, things like that. There's visual inspections. We've got processes for all of that that we train our staff on. That is setting ourselves up for success with having a secure test taker in a secure room at the beginning is the most important thing we do. So we focus on setting our proctors up for success. Once we've gone through that, I'm going to be escorted to my computer workstation, sit down, I get logged in, and then my full focus is on the test. I, as a customer, I'm going to proceed through my sections. I'm focused on the test. The TCA, the proctor, test center administrator is the term we use, they're going to be monitoring throughout the whole exam. It's not just I set us up for success and walk away. All of our test centers have CCTV or video surveillance system inside of them to provide our proctors with in-room eyes. We couple that with regular walkthroughs of the testing room. It's a physical presence deterrent. It is monitoring via CCTV. It's continuous monitoring. At no point is a test taker left unmonitored. That's the key part. Whether that's physical in person, whether that's via the video surveillance system, and that's what we want to make sure throughout their experience. When they conclude, they're going to wrap up their exam on the workstation, come back out to the TCA. We're going to make sure that their workstation has been shut down, and we're going to release them, provide them, get them their locker, provide them their personal belongings, and they're going to go out the door. So that's what it looks like to me as a customer. And when we talk about test day robustness, we focus with our staff every day on making sure we're securing that testing room, that we are doing those proper physical security checks. That's so key for us. Monitoring is important, but the proper physical security checks every day, every test center in the world. We'll probably talk a little bit about what our auditing looks like and that quality assurance program here today as well. But that's our number one focus from a test day robustness.
Fantastic, very interesting. I think one thing I consistently hear back in feedback from other stakeholders is how rigorous and robust we are with respect to these policies and practices that you just identified, Kevin. Charlie, what would you, in your opinion, say sets PSI apart?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of what, great question, Tom. In terms of what PSI, sets PSI apart, I think it's the decades of experience we have, how we use technology, but also how we use proven data science in our kind of analytics to look at how we're we're achieving things. So if we look at those separately, we have teams within PSI. PSI's security experts, around 70 plus individuals, all with decades, or a lot with decades of experience, and across a number of areas. So that's in terms of looking at that. We also have dedicated teams who are looking at the data, using science, so looking at real-time data forensics, to really look at what data points are we, could be used to actually identify where there may be fraudulent activity as well. So that is the second part. And then the third thing is, as a large organization, we spend a lot of time in terms of research and development into our security practices, and actually utilize cutting edge technology to improve, and to continuously improve how we deliver the security. Some examples of that would be ID verification. So actually using cutting edge technology in terms of ensuring that the person who's taking the test is actually the person who booked the test. We also look at technology around global search. So actually being able to view the biometrics. And as at PSI, we're probably the only supplier who actually uses different types of biometrics. So that's voice capture and sort of image capture as well at the point of the test taking, to ensure we're delivering a good, secure and robust high stakes testing.
Fantastic.
You know,
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
I'll add one more on there, because I loved everything Charlie mentioned, but from my side, I just have to reinforce, I think what makes PSI, respected and our robustness in this space is really the culture of our organization, on top of everything Charlie mentioned, which is key, But from my perspective as the director of security, it's not treated as though it's my role and my role alone. It is truly everyone I work with, be it Charlie, be it the folks that run our test center network, our customer care team, the folks that mark exams. It's really our culture where everyone buys in, focuses on exam security, highlights concerns or gaps. I think that's one of the features that truly sets us apart.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that, Kevin. And actually, I think it's the collaboration, not just internally, so actually in terms of that, but actually collaboration with our key stakeholders. A lot of the work as in my role as being the key contact with the Home Office and with other sort of awarding organizations is our collaborative approach to how we mitigate, how we identify, and how we deal with any identified risks as well. And actually we work with them, whether that's on identifying sort of high risk locations through to our mystery shopper program. It's a very much a collaborative approach and openness. So I think that's really, really important as well. So totally agree, Kevin. Collaboration, and how we embed testing security across all aspects of our security.
Yeah, fantastic. I think the culture of openness is definitely something which I resonate as well. I think that my perception is that our openness is quite unique in the market of English proficiency testing, and I think that really develops trust with our stakeholders, not only on one side with the government in the UK, but also with universities as well. And I think that kind of openness and transparency is something that I've had fed back quite a lot. As what universities really appreciate. I think building that trust is so important in a high stakes world where people are making massive life decisions and spending massive amounts of money to change their future for the better, whether that be for a work or a study visa, for example. Kevin, I want to ask, what other ways do you think our security policies and practices help to develop that trust in people? The way that we approach, say, examples of fraud or malpractice, for example.
Absolutely. So, As you mentioned, one of our stakeholders is the home office team, and I think one of the ways that they as a stakeholder have bought into to the trust and appreciation of what we do is when we deal with cases of tips or concerns, or it's a Charlie mentioned forensically driven irregularities that we look at, the statistical evidences we look at. We bring that to the home office as quickly as possible, not just to highlight to them, but to say, here's what we're looking at, and here's what we're doing about it. I like to tell folks that as much as we do have a lot of innovative solutions around technology and process, at the end of the day, we don't have a secret sauce that this one technology feature makes us unique amongst everyone in the space. What I think builds the trust with our stakeholders is that we are so vigorous in our approach. We identify an issue, we highlight it, and we run it to ground with a vigorousness and engagement and a buy-in again from all parties here. When we have a concern around a test center, we're gonna go visit that test center. Might be the next day. We have audit partners around the world. They're going to give us the ability. We're not going to see a concern and say in the next 30 days we'll be there. We're going to be there tomorrow or the next day. That type of that pattern of behavior, not just in one instance, but every time we have a concern, every time we have a tip, every time we have data forensics identifies a concern, we're going to run it to ground. And some of those there's nothing, there's not the tip is not valid. That occurs, but we never disregard tips offhand. There's always something interesting, something a piece of information there that might be accurate, and we want to do our best to validate it. So from my perspective, it's actions. Beyond tools, beyond elements, it's actions. How do we implement those, and the turnaround, the speed at which we execute those? I truly think that's what builds that trust.
I think, and just adding to that, Kevin, actually, I think communication is a key part of that trust. So actually communicating quickly, efficiently, and involving, the clients, involving the home office as we communicate. So not just sending an incident report, but sitting down with them, talking it through, being very open in terms of anything, and then dealing to resolution, I think is really important, and having those regular contact points. So having that communication is critical, and also communication with our network, whether that's our proctors for live online proctoring or whether it's our invigilators in our test centers. It's ensuring they have a communication into the security teams to be able to identify any concerns or tips that they may have, but also then ways that we can improve, whether that's through training of our, as Kevin mentioned earlier, went through all our test day processes. It's around not identifying something that's hugely innovative. A lot of the work is around those very smaller improvements to ensure that we're at the end of the day we're making it as a simple process and a frictionless customer experience, and that is key as well, that we kind of we don't we have robust security, but we really focus on having that frictionless customer experience.
And Charlie, I think something else that falls more under your remit with respect to what enables our stakeholders to have so much trust in us is how much independent assurance and validation our policies and practices have. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. I'd love to talk through that. Thank you. So we don't just say that we do a good job. We actually get independent recognition of that, whether that's through our ISOs. So as you'd expect, we're ISO 27001 information security credit certified, which requires an annual audits, as well as independent audits from a cybersecurity experts to the particularly around a lot of our programs around the HMG security guidelines and the CAF framework set out by the NCSC as well. So those two form key parts of our independent assurance to ensure we have a robust information security management system. We're using the correct policies and procedures, but also we're meeting the key requirements that are laid out in the HMG guidelines as well. On top of that, we also, when we're undertaking some of our quality assurance systems, which actually looking at, our test centers or proctors, are they following the set sort of processes to ensure we're doing the security checks? So we will get independent auditors doing those mystery shops with us as well. And also, and as part of that, Cyber Essentials is a critical part of what we do. So across the whole of the customer journey, whether that's through the booking system and all our sort of test delivery systems, we have annual penetration testing or pen testing, which is completed by independent auditors to identify any gaps in security or any threats that we need to mitigate in our systems, through to Cyber Essentials certification. So as a company, we are Cyber Essentials certificated as well. So all in that, in terms of the robust processes we deliver, we also get assurance that actually we're meeting those robust security requirements by getting those independent assurance. So it's something that we commit to, and something that we really find key as part of our continuous improvement activity as well.
Fantastic. Right, so as those in attendance may be aware, there were two clauses after the colon of the title of this session. The first was the skills for English method, and the second was why other industries are buying it off PSI. And I think I'd like to introduce this as the second part. So as many of you in attendance may be aware, PSI have been around for a very long time, 75 years, and mostly in testing of various different kinds, psychometric testing, credentialing, assessments, as well as English proficiency. And we deliver in total millions and millions of tests every year all over the world. This leads to the building of a very strong reputation. Our clients see the exceptional delivery in security and in operations, and they come back to us every time. They come back to us all the time because we do it so well. This news spreads across the industry, and as a result, other companies in the English proficiency sector, as well as in other industries, have decided that they would like our know-how, our operational expertise, and our resources, our infrastructure, our software stack, to excel in their own testing environments, even when maybe they have their own logistical operational arms. We do it so well, and then they want to come to us. So I think what I'd like to do is introduce a little bit more about what this offering is starting to become. This is a product that we're calling Test Security as a Service, and I'd like to introduce sort of what that entails, what the different services on offer are, and how it arose as well. So perhaps, Kevin, could I ask a little bit about how this opportunity to help others in our industry and beyond arose?
Yeah, no, Test Security as a Service is a service PSI has been offering for a little over a year now, and it really is an outgrowth of what our current customer base values in us, what they respect in us, is the themes we've already touched on today. And it's a recognition, I think, from our side to say, not just serving our customers today, how can we provide what we believe is best in class security services across this industry further. So it may be for an organization that doesn't even test with PSI, but providing those various test security as a service features. So, for example, that could be running an investigation. We run investigations globally, and those investigations are, from reviewing data all the way down to knocking on doors and doing interviews. We have resources globally that we utilize to conduct those investigations today. That's a reaching capability that a lot of our others in the industry or prospective clients of ours don't have. They don't have, as you mentioned, that operational reach and experience to deal with complex security incidents. And so it's really an offering that we have leaned into to leverage the best practices that we employ and the people that are here that have the experience and knowledge in dealing with these types of complex security issues. How can we move this industry forward? Because ultimately, we focus on the assessment industry as a whole. What is good for the assessment industry is good for PSI and vice versa. It's really, if we can make sure that faith in the validity and value of assessments can be increased, it's good for PSI and throughout our industry. So that's what test security as a service really has come about at. It is offering our full suite or any combination thereof that we do today in service of a program like CELT and leveraging that across other customers in this space. It's very exciting. We've had some great opportunities so far to work with some wonderful organizations, and I'm really excited about where this is going forward.
And just to add to that, Kevin, actually, in terms of test security as a service, I think one of the key areas that we've seen organizations coming to us is that they see how we've dealt, we take a threat-driven approach, and how we actually our approach to sort of identifying proxy test taking as well. So proxy test taking could be one example of where an organization may want support in terms of utilizing PSI's experience in terms of doing that. And that is a real important area across the industry that is seen. So actually that is an area that I know is very key, as well as utilizing test security as a service for the detection, prevention, and response as well. So it could be, supporting the detection. It could be, which could be using, our global search technologies. Some of our technological improvements could be using IDV, as I mentioned earlier. It could be around prevention. So actually looking at the organization's risk management approach, or looking at their policies and procedures as well. It could be around, advanced fraud analytics. So actually we talked earlier about how we use data science and data forensics, but it's actually how we can use our business intelligence tools to consume large data and then develop fraud indicators based on patterns of anomalies. So it's a mixture of things that can be utilized. And as Kevin mentioned, it's something that can fit particular organizations. So it's not one size fits all. Every organization have different threat levels, have different areas. And with the expertise, the size of our security function enables us to provide the service that we deliver for our own clients to other parts of the businesses that we work with as well.
I appreciate you calling that out, Charlie. Focused on not just, I lean a little heavy into investigations. That's kind of my wheelhouse day to day. So I always tend to gravitate there. But to Charlie, your point on the prevention side, the detection side, really the whole paradigm around security. I appreciate you mentioning that, because that is the features. We'll have a black hat event with a client where we'll sit down. We're like, all right, let's understand your threat profile, the risks in your market, and talk through the solutions and policies, practices, solutions that you should implement as a best practice. So yes, it's much more encompassing.
I'd love if we could actually drill down a little bit further into some of these examples that you've mentioned. I think that certainly when I hear more about how these actually work, these different kinds of policies or practices or software, how they actually work, what they actually do, it's one thing for us to sit here and say, yes, we're really secure, promise, you can trust us, yeah, please trust us, righteous. And it's another thing to actually go into the detail of, no, actually, this is how we do it, this is how it works, and this is why it works. One thing I think will be most palpable for the audience, one thing that will be easiest to understand is our security audits and especially our enhanced security audits. Kevin, can you speak to those a little bit? How does that actually work? What happens?
Yes. So advanced security audits are one of the best practices we employ, again, across our organization. And really, they are that investigative element that is the outcome of everything we just talked about before. All of the feed-in, the advanced fraud analytics, these data points that open our eyes to say there's a concern. Just focusing on a recent example, looking. Advanced fraud analytics is kind of an umbrella term that we tailor for each program. The analytics for CELT are different than those, say, a US-based healthcare certification partner. And so what we'll look for is patterns that we identify. It's not just test results. It can be scheduling patterns. It can be distance from a test center, and days in advance of the test center that you're scheduling. We're looking at those details and informing us to say there's something questionable. Now, how do we turn that insight into on the ground facts? That's where we turn to our advanced or enhanced unannounced audit. These are an audit that we tailor to try to get that smoking gun evidence, if you will, catch folks red-handed, engaging in behaviors that are unethical. We all know that there's everywhere in the world there's always an incentive to engage in misconduct, and because there's an incentive, some people are going to be tempted to do it. So we recognize that even if you've had a test partner that's been a great partner for years, staff can change, circumstances can change, and we know that there can be a concern. So all of that information that kind of flows into opening our eyes, as I mentioned, turns into on the ground. And what do we do on the ground? One of the best things we do with our enhanced security audits is we focus on an audit that's not a traditional audit. A traditional audit, whether I'm showing up here on behalf of PSI, I don't want to see your test operation today. I want to monitor how you're performing. Take a review of the physical layout of your site, all of these things. That's important. Secret shops, where we go as a customer, we have to take the exam ourselves, again, to validate all those elements. Those are important. But when we have a specific lead, we'll do an enhanced security audit where we'll focus on, all right, we're not really concerned about the overall experience. I'm concerned about fraud happening today. Is there fraud happening today? And so it's a high touch audit. It's one where my team is going to be on the phone with the auditor anywhere they are in the world, and we're going to give them a go signal to go into a test center. We're going to wait until testing is commenced. We're going to walk in. We want to see who's in the test room, who's in front of their computer, and the facts that's happening there in the moment. And using that as the best practice, we're able to identify in many cases actual fraud happening, and that fraud, that outcome is not just great. We caught someone cheating. It informs us in many ways. Now that we know certain patterns in advanced fraud analytics, again, have been found to be truthful in practice. It informs our data to say, yes, our data is accurate, and we can continue to rely on this when we do future investigations. Two, if we can see what's happening on the ground and we can confirm it, it's not just probabilities anymore, but it's confirmed. That really gives us clear decision making around invalidation of results for other test takers that may be involved. It gives us that clarity, the ability to make strong decisions that have significant impacts. And that's really a best practice that we employ. Again, we do a lot for the CELP program, but it's nothing unique to the CELP program. It's a PSI best practice, and it has lots of those knock-on benefits, both for informing our stakeholders around the validity of any individual's exam on that day, and then for us internally in the future, understanding what patterns have we confirmed are suspicious, and we can continue to lean into those, refine those advanced fraud analytics. It's always a learning and growing process on our side to how we can continue to be better.
Yeah, and Kevin, just to add to that, and from what I, as part of our collaboration, what I know from what the outcomes of those enhanced audits is actually the corrective actions that may come from that, and actually it's looking at it, from those corrective actions that may result in us, if we see something that is fraudulent, we very much have a zero tolerance policy. So we would suspend a particular site, for example, immediately, do further investigations before that. But it's also looking at the minor corrective actions, and what I know the clients like and the Home Office, is around providing a full detailed report with corrective actions, with clear timelines of when those will be resolved, and the fact that we act on that quickly as well. So that's the one area that I think is really important from that I see coming through, is actually how quickly we get those enhanced security audit reports, and also how quickly we deal with those results as well. The other area that I do think is really important from the enhanced security audits, which is something that is really, it's, as we've talked about, we use large amounts of data. We use our data science to identify fraud trends, which may result in us wanting to do an enhanced security audit. But one of the things that is really great, we don't get that data and then sitting around with it, creating an audit, say 2 or 3 months in advance. Actually, we have good relationships with auditors in the ground. So if, for example, we see something this week that is identified, we turn those enhanced security audits around quickly. So Kevin's team would go out, even weekend or early next week to do that. And I think that's what one thing, Tom, as you were talking about earlier, about what sets us apart. It's actually the kind of commitment, but also our sort of timeliness. We act at pace. We kind of really act at pace when we identify these, identify any anomalies, and we follow up on those anomalies. We don't wait for other things to come on. We act proactively. So just wanted to add to those points, Kevin, in terms of the benefits of those enhanced security audits.
I think your discussion of what you refer to as anomalies is really key. I think in an industry where there's lots of money flowing about and lots of high stakes decisions happening, like Kevin mentioned, there are always going to be people incentivized to commit malpractice. And so I think going into detail here, and especially thinking about what I think is actually quite cool from our end, is these spies on the ground sitting outside test centers, sunglasses on in a blacked out car, not literally, just to clarify, but and then walking in during the middle of test day and noticing all this malpractice from data we've collected through the data forensics and the data science that Charlie's referred to as well. I think hearing about that and understanding how quickly we can turn that around is a real trust building policy that we have, I believe. What I think also contributes to that trust building is the openness with which we treat transparency, say with the Home Office or with universities when these aforementioned anomalies can occur. One thing I think that people would be interested in hearing more about are the kinds of anomalies or fraud or malpractice that we tend to deal with, and how do we deal with those kinds, especially when they come in the form of whistleblowing tip-offs, right, which is often a source of our data for dealing with these malpractice issues. Who would like to take that?
Yeah, no, I can speak to that. I always like to mention when I talk about tips that we get, they can come from anywhere in the world and from any source. And I always take all tips seriously. In our own individual roles, I'm sure we've all seen different leads that sometimes might be you look into it and there's nothing really there, but it's really interesting from my side. I take every tip as there's something correct. I don't take it all at face value, but I also never disregard it. Every tip is going to have things that are right and things that are wrong. And it gives us an opportunity to ask those questions. Like, let's go back. Let's look at all of our advanced indicators. Do any of those indicators support or add to what the tipster is receiving? Let's go review our prior audits. What are we seeing there? Do we need to go knock on a door again? Do we need to follow up again? It's always interesting seeing a tip, because many times I've had tips that are half wrong, but they were saying misconduct was happening. They didn't get it right. They didn't know what kind of misconduct was happening, but they were correct that there was misconduct, and we were able to run that to ground. Your typical misconduct is always, again, with the incentive. Someone who's at the test center who may be compromised ethically is always a risk, and a lot of tipsters can say there's something wrong happening. It's my job to figure out what that wrong is, and that's what we do, and it's all of those elements that we played in. We get a tip, we're going to report the tip and let the home office know that we're running to ground with this. Good, bad, or otherwise, we're going to run this one to ground. We'll keep you updated as we go. That's that communication. We're going to give them, even before we get into the meat of it, we're going to say we have this and here's where we're going with it. And then it turns into a review of all of our indicator elements and then new investigative elements. That's on the ground, that's following up with the tipster, that's reaching out to other test takers, all of those elements. And we can and do find, it's not uncommon, we do find folks that have engaged in some type of unethical behavior. I think we've already talked about our enhanced security audits. That is one of the ways that we're able to provide that absolute clarity of what happened. It's not just a suspicion of what's happening. We're able to confirm it on the ground, and they're not in a blacked out car, but they're down the street having a coffee, waiting for me to give them the green light to go into a test center. So again, to be successful, we have a wonderful team, a global team that supports us in this. I'm U.S. based. I know the team is in the UK, and we have resources around the world. That to Charlie's point, it's Thursday afternoon here where I'm at, and I guarantee I could be anywhere in the world on Saturday morning that we need to be there. So the ability for us to take a tip, act on it quickly. If you have a tipster who's going to say something's happening soon, if you can't be there, it's not going to do you any good. So it's really being able to put that into action comes as the outcomes that really support and build a paradigm. And from our side, all of our partners, they know how active we are. They know how aggressive we are with auditing. We're going to knock on their door regularly. They're going to hear from us. It's that environment, which, yes, we're great at identifying and taking action against unethical behavior. I think the degree to which we are engaging our network, to which we are out there conducting those quality assurance activities, ultimately lead to far fewer cases of unethical behavior than I think we could find, because that deterrent effect. There's a temptation, but they know that PSI is active, and I think there's a great deterrence in that. And we always share. When we identify misconduct, we identify inappropriate behaviors, not just to the homeless. We share within our network that we are out, we are taking these actions. We want folks to know it. It builds that part of that culture, part of that buy-in that we look for. Again, not just internally, but with our test partners, that kind of builds our overall footprint.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay.
Yeah, and Kevin, just to add that, I'm glad you added in that information around, it's constantly communicating with our, because actually a lot of our eyes and ears on the ground are our test center staff who are doing those checks. So it's really important that we work with them. We provide them with the best practice. We kind of identify trends and we share that across the network as well to identify, so we detect that fraud. And that's one of the areas that I think we are outstanding at. Which again, probably Tom, going back to our independent assurance, is also picked up when we have our independent assurance as well, which is key. The other area I do want to just quickly touch on is when we do these audits, we kind of have security auditing experts completing these audits. We don't have people who is part of other activity they do. They are focused on 100% doing audits, so they know exactly what to look at. What sometimes you can find that maybe audits are happening, but actually the question to probably ask is actually who are actually doing those audits, and what training and what kind of expertise do they have in there, because actually that is really important to spot things that maybe if you're doing an audit, but actually your other, your role may be something slightly different, you may not pick up on those nuances as well. That's what PSI, we have trained, specific auditors in sort of going into centres and auditing them on whether it's Skills for English, whether it's anything else that any of our other programs as well.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, both. That brings us to the end of the allocated 45-minute slot we had for sort of general discussion. And I see a couple of questions in my chat up here, so I'm going to go through these one by one. Perhaps I think actually talking about these enhanced security audits where we go in on the ground with people waiting in the cafe, not in the blacked out SUV. I have one question about whether we have to adapt or change the way that we practice in different parts of the world. I think it's a bit of an open secret in our industry that there are higher risk areas for fraudulent activity and high stakes testing than other parts of the world. And I guess so I guess this person's kind of touching on something that may have an impact into our day-to-day operations, but who has anything to add on to this?
Yeah, no, from our side, I think Charlie mentioned it at some point in the conversation, we take a risk-based approach to all of our programs. Again, this is the same type of approach we'll treat across PSI, not just with the CELP program. But from a risk-based approach, we're going to look at where are the test takers, where's volume, where is unusual pass rates, flag behavior, all of those pieces, and then our own experience. As you mentioned, with certain regions that experience higher rates of misconduct, what does history inform us? And we use those, even on a site that may have, great statistical outcomes, no concerning behavior, but it's in a region which has the historical high risk. It gets audited more frequently. It gets a knock on the door. It gets a mystery shopper, up to twice the rate of another test center. At the same time, as much as we focus in high risk, it's not to the, assuming risk does not take place in other markets. I think we'd be foolish to say that there's no risk in those other markets. So making sure that we focus and continue to do our standard cadence in those other markets that are low risk, but in high risk markets, it is, making sure our presence is known and that you could be audited any day, and being in that constant communication. I think that is one of the key ways that we approach the differences, the realities on the ground for the testing market. And that's one of the best practices. And every time we work with the client that wants to say, here's a template for the whole world, we always say, great, we appreciate that, but we would recommend, again, as a best practice, from our experience, much like we talk about test security as a service, our experience is going to say your dollars, your pounds, they're going to be better spent if we kind of allocate in a way that matches your risk. I want to have my eyes everywhere, but let's make sure we're putting our resources time where they're the most fruitful.
I also just want to add that. So, as Kevin said, what we see in terms of trends or whatever may, we may commence our cycle of activity based on that perceived threat level. However, our program of activity is based on data. So we will actually look at the data, the tips, and we will look at that, and that will determine our enhanced or our auditing program as well. The other point I really want to highlight, which is really important, is actually consistency in approach. So it doesn't matter if a test center is delivering one test or 100 tests, we still expect them to go through the same robust security processes, so that actually a test taker, if they're testing in, a location in Africa versus a location in Europe, we still have follow the same robust, secure, um, you know, processes of validation and security controls at the point of testing. And that is what we check in terms of our audit process. So we expect our centres in all parts of the world to follow the same strict processes we have in place. So I think that's a really important point to note. And then obviously the data will then help us identify where we focus our audit activity as well.
I've also just thought of another interpretation to this person's question, which, given our lens or frame of reference today on security, perhaps is excusable, but as the UK government approved secure English language tests with test centres in more countries than any other provider, our extra measures in some parts of the world actually involve placing test centres where no other CELT provider has a centre in the first place, right? We are, very dedicated to accessibility as much as to security. Accessibility not necessarily the topic of this webinar, but extra measures in some parts of the world for us also involves being accessible, being present, where existing legacy providers haven't bothered to put a test center. There are, I think I'm right in thinking, 300 million people's worth of countries' populations in whose countries only Skills for English CELT test centers are available for CELT test taking purposes. So I think that whilst it's clear that we try to avoid bias by treating every country the same, as well as spotting demographic, geographical patterns in certain malpractice behaviors, we also try to balance that with a really progressive policy on accessibility worldwide. So I hope that answers any possible.
Yeah, and to add to that, Tom, part of every finding a site in, say, a country that no other provider has, at the same time as making sure that we're not compromising on the quality or performance of that site. To Charlie's point, that it's a site that we have local audit resources available for. It's a site that meets all of our standards, the site that we visit. So it is again a collaboration with our test center team and ourselves to make sure that we can make those additions and that they are indeed quality additions to the network.
And Tom, to add to that as well, accessibility is really important. And probably a link to that is where we have that coverage, over 300 centers across 150 locations for Skills for English. We need to have a scalable, robust security and auditing process. And also that process needs to cover the whole of the customer journey, from test design, all the way through to results delivery, through to everything. So I know we're focused very much today on sort of the test facilitation piece, but actually security is something that is embedded across the whole customer journey. But just to add one final point on that question is, because accessibility is really important, because security is really important to us and to our clients, we are ISO 22301 business continuity certified, and part of that approach is having contingencies in place if there's a it could be something where there's a Hurricane Melissa, for example, in terms of requiring a test center in a different part of the country that's not been affected, or there needs to be a quick onboarding of a new test center because of our zero tolerance approach to any security instance. We always have a part of our business continuity, our robust business continuity is having the ability to be able to maintain that accessibility and maintain that network of test centers across the globe. So we're always working with other test center providers or other providers who can deliver where we have concerns and want to shut a particular site down.
Yeah, I think we have time for one final question, and I'm going to choose one that I'm guessing comes from a university, given that universities have their own relationships with the Home Office. The question is, what do the Home Office expect from a CELT? Charlie, I think you operate quite a lot in conjunction with the Home Office. Perhaps you want to take this one.
Yeah, that's probably very simple to answer, Tom. And I think it covers everything we've covered to date. What the Home Office want from a CELT provider is assurance of robust security, is customer accessibility, and the ability for customers to have a seamless customer journey. Those are the three probably key areas that the Home Office expect to us. So, which is really important that as we've talked through, today, earlier in today's session, we have a very robust security process across the whole of the customer journey, but we do it in such a way that is as frictionless as possible to the customer, so they can, from a Home Office perspective, they can continue their immigration or their visa journey in a seamless way. So all of those areas together from us, if we focus particularly on what the Home Office want from security assurance, they want to ensure that there's a fair and robust valid test. They want to ensure that test takers are taking a test and in a secure environment, both physical controls, but also ensuring that there's no either collusion, proxy test taking. They want all those assurances in place, everything we've talked through today. But probably most importantly, they want that done, but they want their CELT providers to communicate and to collaborate with them as well. So those are the kind of key areas that the Home Office want from a CELT provider.
Fantastic insights. Okay, I think we'll have to wrap up there because we're coming to a close. We're coming to the top of the hour, at least here in the UK. I'd like to thank everyone for coming. I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you for your questions as well. I'm sure we've provided at least some sort of stimulation at some points of the last hour. In a few weeks' time, on the 17th of November, we are having the second installation of this webinar series. This time it's more about AI and the use of large language models in test preparation and generation. So do please join us then. It will be November 17th at 3 p.m. UK time. If you have any other questions for us, you're welcome to email me. I'm tom.williamson@psionline.com. If you're interested in soliciting our services for test security as a service, then you're also welcome to get in touch. We can happily help. Thanks very much for being here, and I hope you've enjoyed.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.